1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Back to Balance of Power right now, and I'm delighted to say we're joined by our crack political panel of Joe Watkins and also Jeannie Zaino of Iona. So we've just been listening to the President's news conference, and he talked actually about some things that were touched upon, Joe, in the debate last night, and that is Turkey, Syria, U.S. foreign policy. Basically, his position, I won't call it isolationist because that characterizes it, but he basically says that's their problem. It's between Turkey and Syria. The United States does not want to have soldiers die in a dispute between Turkey and Syria. Does he have the heartbeat of the United States right?
Well, clearly he's being consistent with what he's always said. I mean, early on, as a candidate, he said, for the most part, he was about America first, and that he wasn't really interested in being involved in the affairs of other countries around the world. And so this is consistent with that. And while it may not be popular everywhere, while there are many, even within the Republican Party, who thought that perhaps what was done could have been done differently, he's nonetheless being very consistent with what he said all along.
And Jeannie, one of those within the Republican Party with perhaps a different view is Lindsey Graham. And the President of the United States was asked about Lindsey Graham being critical, and he basically said Lindsey Graham would like us to keep troops in the Middle East. He said for 1,000 years he should deal with what the people of South Carolina care about, and that is not having troops in the Middle East. Again, do you think he's got it right?
Well, you know, it's fascinating to me talking about the debate last night and this issue, because you see the president has strange bedfellows here. You know, on the one hand, his very close ally, Lindsey Graham, is somebody who he is completely at odds with on this issue, and yet who is he close with? He's close with people like potentially Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders or Tulsi Gabbard, because this is an enormous break in the Republican Party from what had been the traditional Republican view, which is represented by people like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell on the one hand, and some of the, you know, people we saw running in 2016 against the president, versus this sort of new, and Joe is absolutely right, new idea that he's brought into the party and has really exploded. And you see it represented by the president and people like Rand Paul. So it's a huge sort of fracture within the Republican Party, which puts him, you know, sort of in this like similar vein to people who have been very, very sort of left-leaning progressive Democrats on questions like this.
Well, exactly. And if there is a fracture in the Republican Party over this issue, is it a difficult fracture for Democrats to take advantage of? Because it would be passing strange for Democrats all of a sudden to become very interventionist when it comes to military matters, right, Jeannie?
Yeah, absolutely. It puts Democrats in a very uncomfortable position. You know, it's hard for an Elizabeth Warren to stand up there and attack the president on this when she is a lot closer to him than she is, say, to a Joe Biden on an issue like this. So, you know, we're seeing this sort of migration in the parties trying to figure out their way on these issues of these long-term interventions. And we saw Tulsi Gabbard try to raise that last night, and Pete Buttigieg responding to that, Elizabeth Warren in this uncomfortable position. And I think we're going to see sort of a similar vein as we move from the primaries into the general election, which it's hard for either party electorally to win on this foreign policy issue because they're sort of both all over the map on it.
So, Joe Watkins, there was more discussion about foreign policy than I remember in the prior debates, but there was an awful lot on domestic as well.
That's right.
And one thing I'd really like to focus on, and it's been focused on, I think, in every debate, is the Medicare for All issue, and particularly how it gets paid for. There was an interesting exchange, actually, last night between Senator Warren on the one hand and Pete Buttigieg on the other about whether she's really answering the question of how it gets paid for.
I will not sign a bill into law that does not lower costs for middle-class families.
Mayor Buttigieg, you say Senator Warren has been, quote, evasive about how she's going to pay for Medicare for all. What's your response?
Well, we heard it tonight. A yes or no question that didn't get a yes or no answer.
So, Joe, I have to say, in watching that last night, I thought Pete Buttigieg kind of had a point because they kept asking, will you increase taxes? Her response was, the costs will go down. She wouldn't talk about taxes. Nobody pinned her down on it. Yeah. So do we know yet how Senator Warren would pay for this Medicare for All?
We don't. And Pete Buttigieg made big points last night by just bringing that to light for everybody to see very, very clearly. Of course, all of these kinds of policies make it difficult for Democrats to to suppose that they're going to win the middle in a general election. I mean, any program that's a massive government program that is paid for by additional taxes is not going to be popular with the middle or with the right.
So, Jeannie, I must say, looking at that out in middle America, which I know a little something about, quite apart from whether you can pay for it, I think there's a question, isn't there, about whether we really are comfortable turning over to the federal government all of our health care. I mean, there are a lot of people around Ohio, Michigan, things who don't think the federal government can handle things like that very well.
Absolutely, and this is why I think, Mayor Pete, and also I would say Amy Klobuchar, who I think had her best debate yet. Unfortunately, she's still very far down in the polls. They really brought this question to the forefront. Pete Buttigieg is talking about, Medicare for all who want it. In other words, let people choose. If they want to use Medicare, let them use it. If they want to retain their private health care, which, by the way, millions of Americans have, and perhaps we don't enjoy it, but we have it and we use it and we're not ready to get rid of it, let them choose. And you have Elizabeth Warren up there, Stephen Colbert hit her on this. She's getting hit by her fellow Democrats on this. We know the only way to pay for this is the only way a government raises money, and that's taxation. She wants to say she's going to tax the billionaires, but the fact is taxes will be raised to pay for this. And she and Bernie Sanders are trying to make the point that'll be offset by the decreases in other out-of-pocket expenses. But you've got to be honest about the question, and I think she has a real problem here as we move into the general if she makes it that far.
So, Joe, we've seen the Democrats at every debate sort of have a lot of disagreement about exactly what the plan is, how you pay for it, things like that. At the same time, you can't beat somebody with nobody. And right now, as far as I can tell, President Trump and the Republicans have no alternative. They have no medical plan.
Well, that's true, but clearly President Trump can draw an easy line between himself and Elizabeth Warren if she ends up being the nominee with regards to Medicare for all. Either she or Bernie with the Medicare for all idea and with their unwillingness to be even reasonable to the middle by saying, who care to have it. They make it very easy for the incumbent president in a debate in 2020 to say that they're socialists and that this is not attractive. This is not what America wants. Clearly not what middle America wants. So I think they make it very, very easy for President Trump.
So, Jeannie, I sure don't see any indication of attacking toward the middle by either Senator Warren or by Senator Sanders. I mean, conventional wisdom, I think, normally is at some point you got to move to the middle to win the general. Are they going to double down even through the general if one of them gets the nomination?
I think Bernie Sanders will. I do see a few signs of Elizabeth Warren potentially tacking, and I think actually what we just talked about, the fact that she refuses to acknowledge that she would have to raise taxes is part of that strategy. And, I think Bernie Sanders is actually helping her tack to the middle. We've just learned, for instance, that he is going to be endorsed by the squad, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and three other freshman females in the House who are much more liberal. They are endorsing him. They're not endorsing her. And while, he needs the endorsement and everybody likes an endorsement, I think this actually helps her because it suggests that she's not the liberal they want her to be. Similarly, we saw Bernie Sanders out, doing interviews. And what did he say? He said, I'm a real socialist. Elizabeth Warren is a capitalist. And, to a certain extent, that's something Elizabeth Warren has said. That's why her plan, for instance, to break up the big tech companies, that's why she's doing it the way she is. She's a capitalist. She says it. She wants there to still be competition. She is doing it in a way to, as best as possible, not try to fall over that edge into socialism. So I agree with Joe. I think the president's going to try to paint them all as socialists if he can. But I do think Elizabeth Warren shows more indications to me as being willing to move a bit to the center in the general than somebody like a Bernie Sanders.
So it is striking to me. We've talked now about last night's debate for several minutes. I don't think we've mentioned the name of the man who, at least we have thought, is the front runner, and that is Joe Biden, which may reflect a little bit of the debate last night because I didn't hear as much from him as I would have thought. Going into this, Joe, one of the big questions was, would he have to deal with the issue of his son and Ukraine? And if so, how would he deal with it? It came up right up toward the top, and he said, I did nothing wrong, my son did nothing wrong. Does that put it behind him?
Well, maybe it does, but Joe Biden was absent last night. I mean, he wasn't a key contender in the debate last night. And if you look at the financials, the money behind the scenes, he's lagging in cash on hand as compared with Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. That's bad for Joe Biden if he wants to retain maintain his front-runner status. He's got to have capital. He's got to have money. And Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren have tons of small givers who are giving again and again and again, just like they did for Obama. So they're going to continue to have pretty rich cash reserves.
So, Jeannie, it's been perceived, at least in some quarters, whether it's money or it's polls or whatever, that Joe Biden may be losing a bit of momentum and that may be going over to Elizabeth Warren. Did the performance from the former vice president last night indicate a desire to regain that momentum? Was that a strategy?
You know, I thought that it was very telling that the fire was focused on Elizabeth Warren, because I think the people most involved in this campaign, the candidates on the stage, they see her as the leading this race right now, not Joe Biden. And I don't think he did himself any favors. I know there's a school of thought saying, you know, hanging back is the best. Sure, he didn't have any huge missteps, but at this point, his poll numbers are not trending in the right direction. She has been going up steadily. He is pretty much staying the same or going down. I think he needed a better performance last night. I don't think he had it. And I think he had opportunities that he just missed. And I think it's very telling that very few people, except for the moderator, asked him really much about his son. And he, I don't think, defended that very well in particular. I think his son actually did a better job in the interview than Joe Biden did on the debate stage on that point.
Does he have time to turn it around? We've got 4 months now, right, until the Iowa caucus. Jeannie, does he have time to turn it around?
He absolutely has time to turn it around, but I think you see their momentum going. People must watch Pete Buttigieg. The momentum is really in his favor. He's focused on Elizabeth Warren because they're focused on Iowa, and they both have really good ground games there. So, yeah, sure, there's time, but I think Joe Biden, you know, 100%, about 100% name recognition, and he's not moving in the right direction at this point.
And, Joe, how much is President Trump and the impeachment investigation going to suck the oxygen out of the room anyway?
Yes, well, that's a point that I had raised many months ago, which is that it's a rabbit hole. It was a rabbit hole that I said Democrats ought not go down. They've gone down that hole. They may very well get an impeachment, but they won't get a conviction from the Senate, which means that the president will certainly have a lot of momentum from his base and from others who feel that he's been unfairly castigated heading into the general campaign.
So, Jeannie, if you were going to give advice to Joe Biden right now, today, what would you tell him?
You know, I would tell Joe Biden that he really needs to focus on what he is going to do for the American people. He really needs to take Elizabeth Warren on. He needs to sort of take a page from Pete Buttigieg's and Amy Klobuchar's debate performance, in that you have to keep raising questions. She is moving up and she is moving fast. He needs to address where that momentum is coming from.
Okay, many thanks to Joe Watkins and to Jeannie Zaino, our crack political panel. Really great to have you with us today. Now we want to look forward to what comes up next, and that's Bloomberg Business Week. That means it's Jason Kelly.
We're excited, Dave. We're going to get a beige book readout, a reading of what's going on across the country, and we're going to get a readout from Chuck Schwab. He's going to be along, talk about his new book and everything that's going on in this increasingly low-fee, no-fee world. You're going to want to tune in for that one.
Although there's a reason they call it beige. All right. Thanks so much to Jason Kelly. We look forward to that. This is Balance of Power for today. Thanks very much for joining us. We hope you'll see you again tomorrow. This is David Weston, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
Parents, it's up to half price on all toys at Sainsbury's right now, so you can keep us occupied this half term and even stock up for Christmas. The Sainsbury's up to half price toy sale ends 22nd of October.
Subject to availability at selected Sainsbury's stores, excluding Centrals and Locals, not available online. Valid 16th to 22nd of October.
Fly with Cathay Pacific to over 70 destinations across Asia and Australia and move beyond the familiar. State-of-the-art cabins, world-class entertainment and award-winning service, making sure you arrive ready to make the most of whatever lies ahead. Whether it's the stunning coastlines of Sydney, the secluded waterfalls of Bali, or the baroque splendor of Manila. Book now at cathaypacific.com. Cathay Pacific. Move beyond.
And to say happy birthday, we're giving you a pair of award-winning Silver Galaxy Buds.
But it's not my birthday till June.
No, but it's ours. 10 years ago, we launched our first Galaxy smartphone. And to celebrate, we're giving customers who purchase any Galaxy S10, Note 10 or A90 5G the chance to claim a pair of amazing wireless Galaxy Buds.
Wow, and I didn't get you anything.
Get the latest Samsung Galaxy smartphone now at your local O2 shop or o2.co.uk. Offer available on purchases made by the 23rd of October 2019 and claimed online within 30 days. T&Cs apply.
What if you could keep up with cable news even when you're on the go? With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to MSNBC live without any commercial interruptions. All of the news, none of the ads. Listen live on TuneIn Premium today.
Want to know what's happening in right now? The latest headlines are just a tap away with Fox News Talk on TuneIn. When news breaks, get up-to-the-minute coverage on developing stories from around the world. Plus, hear all the Fox shows you watch on your TV. Listen to Fox News Talk around the clock on TuneIn.
In the dictionary, a podcast is this: a digital audio file made available on the internet, typically as a series, of which new installments can be received by subscribers automatically. But on TuneIn, a podcast is this.
I'm Adam Grant, and this is Work Life, my podcast with Ted. We study how to make work not suck.
And it's defined like this.
Blackout is a suspense-filled thriller from Endeavor Audio and Q-Code.
From news, sports, to pop culture, comedy, and beyond. Define your own podcast possibilities on TuneIn.
TuneIn puts you on the sideline for the 2019 college football season free all year long. With college football on TuneIn, hear the home and away call for more than 140 schools live, regular season matchups and rivalry games, conference championships and bowl games, the college football playoff.
The throw, he steps up, he's going deep down the right side, Andrews.
You can listen to it all for free.
The end zone, touchdown.
At home, on campus, or on the road, hear the excitement and pageantry of college football all season long, free on TuneIn.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg Business Week, the Fed in focus.
They've really been steadfast about providing the stability that this country needs.
It's not what they do, it's what they say afterwards.
I wouldn't put it past the Fed to do a very quick 180 here.
It's all about the year ahead at the Fed at this point.
The Fed in focus on Bloomberg Radio.
And live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio in New York City, I'm Jason Kelly. It's Beige Book time. The Fed saying businesses seeing expansion continuing. Many have cut outlook. We're going to dig into that. Price increases have been modest while input costs rose. Wages rising moderately. Employment rising slightly as worker shortages persist. We're going to dig into all that and more. I'm Jason Kelly here in New York City. Taylor Riggs with me out in San Francisco. So much to get to, Taylor, but first, let's get to Charlie Pellet for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Hey, Charlie.
Hi, thank you very much. Here's what's going on. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ lower. Again, little change, down less than 0.1% on the Dow, falling 23 points at 27,000. S&P 500 index lower by 8 at 29.86. That's a drop of 0.3%. NASDAQ down 38, a decline there of 0.5%. 10 years up 7/32 with the yield 1.74%. Gold up 0.6% now, 14.89 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude up 1%, 53.34 a barrel. Again, repeating the Beige Book headlines, U.S. economy did expand at a slight to moderate pace in recent weeks, representing a mild downgrade by the Federal Reserve in its latest report card of the country's economic health. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. The Focus on the Fed brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the 6th straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit Commonwealth.com to learn more. I'm Jason Kelly. She's Taylor Riggs out in San Francisco. How you doing, Taylor?
It's so fun to be here. And Jason, as you know, I can tie in tack to all of our stories today, so get excited.
I know. You're out on the West Coast. You've been hosting the Bloomberg Technology Show. Very nice to join me today for a few hours of radio before you go on to the TV. We're going to talk about, actually, a guy who lives out near you. He's going to be here with me in New York, none other than Chuck Schwab. He's got a new book, and we've got some questions for him, right?
Well, and this ties in directly, Jason, into the online trading fees, the race to zero. When a company like Charles Schwab speaks, TD Ameritrade and Fidelity move just as quickly because they have to keep up. So I'm so excited for that conversation.
Well, and we're going to get into, Taylor, one way to get to Carnegie Hall, $100 million. Sandy Weil becoming the first $100 million man there at Carnegie Hall. And also later on, speaking of tech, the streaming world Netflix is going to be out with earnings. So a lot of fun ahead, I think, right?
And it's going to be all negative free cash flow with Netflix, Jason.
Oh, boy. Wow. You just go there. You just get into it. I love it. All right. So let's set the Business Week agenda now. Here with me in New York, Joe Weisenthal, markets editor for Bloomberg and the co-host of What'd You Miss, a precursor to your Bloomberg technology show. What a great lead-in you have there, Taylor. And Dave Wilson, stocks editor for Bloomberg News. He's here in our Bloomberg Interactive studios as well. So, Joseph, what's the one thing that's top of mind for you?
You know, the economic data that we got this morning is telling a story that I think has been a theme for a while, which is that parts of the economy are, in fact, slowing down, some loss of momentum, deceleration in spending, with the exception of housing, which has been very solid. And we had home builder sentiment from the NAHB hitting its highest level in over a year and a half, I think. And one of the questions for anyone who calls for a recession has to contend with is, do you believe we can go into a recession with housing on the upswing? Because housing isn't just housing. Housing is cars, and housing is TVs, and housing is sofas, and housing is couches. That's the same thing as a sofa. Housing is new tax revenue for local authorities. Housing is jobs for construction workers. And so even if there is weakness from abroad, which is arguably where a lot of the weakness is stemming from, even if there is weakness in manufacturing, this momentum that we're seeing in the cyclically sensitive areas is really important. And I think it provides some ammunition for people who say that the monetary policy hasn't lost its potency, because I believe there's probably a connection between housing momentum and rate cuts. Right. So for people who say rate cuts don't mean anything anymore, pushing on a string, maybe people have been too blithe about that, and that underestimating the potency of this tool.
Well, so David, square with me the two, because we just heard Joe talk about some of the weakness in the economy that we were seeing relative to housing and retail. Yet you take a look at companies like Bank of America, which continue to highlight the strength of the consumer. Square the two with me.
That'll be the challenge, really, for third quarter results as they come through, Taylor, as much as anything, because you've got the Federal Reserve out with its beige book talking about how businesses, many of them at least, lowered their outlooks for growth in the next 6 to 12 months. And so the real question is, once you see results from a whole lot more companies than we have already, what will you get from that? Will it be a case indeed where what the central bank is seeing anecdotally is playing out across companies? I mean, you're right to look at Bank of America, because in general, the results from the banks have been pretty well received. Will that carry through once you start to see more companies, say, beyond healthcare, when we've had some of the results out of that industry, or United Airlines, which is up about 3% in the wake of their results? I mean, that's going to be the question, perhaps, that will hang over the next few weeks as those third quarter reports come out.
All right. So, Taylor, if there was one thing you wanted people to focus on today, what would it be?
My focus comes all the way back down to earnings. We mentioned Netflix. I could bring it to tech and do IBM. And you talk about, yes, the trade war, but at the end of the day, you have to get back down to fundamentals. You put the consumer aside, you get back to earnings. And I'm really curious of what companies can really outperform in this environment and which ones are facing some serious headwinds.
Right. And you've had a number of cuts on software stocks. I mean, Adobe's down, ServiceNow, which is in business software, is down. Workday, also in business software, that stock's down 12.5%. And then you turn to the S&P 500, you see the biggest drop in the index is Salesforce.com, another business software maker. So that's going to be an industry to watch. I mean, if the analysts are trying to get ahead of results by bringing down their ratings, what do they know that the companies will be telling us later?
You worried about tech right now, Joe?
Yeah, I am. I mean, one of the themes that I'm really feeling in this market, and WeWork is the most extreme example, but I think Netflix, which reports earnings after the bell, is another example, is a disinclination to just pay for future growth.
Right.
And that is still an element of a lot of these fast-growing tech companies. You look at a Workday, some of these cloud stocks not doing well. People don't want to just pay for growth's sake anymore, and I think that's going to affect the performance of a lot of these companies.
People feeling the heat out there in Silicon Valley, Tay?
Well, yeah, well, you can't even mention WeWork around here anymore. It's all we do at the top of every show, starting at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Wow,
Dave,
nice little subtle plug there for your show. I like it.
Little humble brag.
Yeah.
Dave, let me give you near the final word here, if you will. We got the beige book data. Did any of these headlines jump out to you? Doesn't seem like it's moving the market. We've been in the red a little bit. But does this continue to highlight some of the cautionary tales that we hear about?
Yeah, I mean, it's more of the same in that sense. There's real concern about, what is company's business going to look like in the fourth quarter and into next year. I mean, certainly that's been something that pops up when, you see people kind of looking ahead of the third quarter results. And that's also evident from what the Fed is reporting based on, their survey. So it does kind of set us up for a situation. We got to figure out how weak is weak.
Right. Well, and it feels like the beige book, and we'll get into this as the show goes on, maybe a little bit of a Rorschach test. You sort of see what you want to see, especially if you're sitting on the FOMC. Dave Wilson, stocks editor for Bloomberg. You'll be back later on with your chart and stock of the day. And Joe Weisenthal headed off to do some TV, co-host of What You Missed, coming up at 4 p.m. Wall Street time. All right, Taylor, let's do the Bloomberg Markets Bite of the Day. It's one number that tells us a lot. Today's number, $150 million. Google, out near you, has announced plans to spend $150 million on renewable energy projects, looking to use the funding to bring green initiatives to the countries where its products are made. Comes less than a month after Jeff Bezos unveiled a broad initiative to reduce Amazon's carbon footprint, and Google announced 18 new solar and wind energy deals across the U.S., Chile, and Europe. That's your Bloomberg Markets Bite of the Day. Let's get to Bob Moon. He's got world national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, President Trump is accusing his predecessor of interfering in the 2016 presidential election that put Trump in the White House. At a news conference this afternoon, the president offered no evidence to support his claim as he took aim at former President Barack Obama.
I just know that our country is looking into the corruption of the 2016 election. It was a corrupt election, whether it's Comey or McCabe or Strzok or his lover, Lisa Page, the two great lovers. There was a lot of corruption. Maybe it goes right up to President Obama. I happen to think it does.
Although the Trump administration has said the troops withdrawn from Syria will remain stationed in the area, the president also insisted he move them out of Turkey's way because he wants to bring them home. He also criticized the Kurds, who Turkey is now battling, saying they're no angels. More than 10,000 Kurd fighters died battling ISIS at the behest of the United States. A Florida man wanted in a campaign case involving associates of Rudy Giuliani is in federal custody after flying to New York's Kennedy Airport today to turn himself in. Republicans, meantime, continue defending what critics call Giuliani's shadow diplomacy, pressing for the investigation of rival Democrats overseas. House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy says he sees nothing wrong with it.
Rudy Giuliani has a right to try to get to the bottom of it, especially when you just put America through this for more than 2 years.
Giuliani's associates are accused of making illegal campaign contributions in support of President Trump. Giuliani has said he had no knowledge of illegal donations. Global News 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. I'm Bob Moon.
Directors of companies are responsible to boards.
Let's begin with the IPO that may not be for a long, long time.
Politicians are mindful of voters.
Are those gains all going to the elite?
Scholars pay attention to data.
Does it spread beyond manufacturing?
And nearly everyone at the top of these professions listens to Bloomberg Surveillance.
Everybody listens when I'm on your show.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance?
Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Are you...
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Find out what you need to do to prepare at gov.uk/Brexit.
Searching for a more memorable short break? Fly from London Heathrow to Cork from $55.99 each way as part of a return trip with Aer Lingus. Step off the plane and into a warm welcome in Cork. Surround yourself with breathtaking coastal views. Soak up the culture of Cork City or head to the colourful town of Kinsale and indulge in the best seafood around. Smart enjoys a short break in Ireland. Smart flies, Aer Lingus. Book now at airlingus.com. Offers subject to conditions and availability.
Carl's All Change Casserole.
So, Chloe walks in from school, tears all over her face.
Daddy,
She says,
I don't want to eat animals anymore.
I blooming love my meat, but not as much as I love my little girl. That's why we've made some changes to our old favourite, sausage casserole. Now with meat-free Cumberlands, but still with my magic touch, a dollop of mango chutney. Just as tasty as it used to be.
Better, actually.
Make your own with the new Tesco Plant Chef range, Food Love Stories, brought to you by Tesco.
Hey, it's me again, the TV. Since my family gave me Now TV, there's no more endlessly searching for something they want to watch, because now I don't do filler TV, just killer TV. If my family want crime dramas, I've got loads, and they're never going to guess who did it. Dramas, I've got all the big shows from Sky Atlantic. Or how about football? I've got the Premier League. Now they can watch whatever they're in the mood for.
What's your TV got for you tonight? Now TV. 18 plus, month passes auto renew, terms apply.
And to say happy birthday, we're giving you a pair of award-winning Silver Galaxy Buds.
But it's not my birthday till June.
No, but it's ours. 10 years ago, we launched our first Galaxy smartphone. And to celebrate, we're giving customers who purchase any Galaxy S10, Note 10 or A90 5G the chance to claim a pair of amazing wireless Galaxy Buds.
Wow, and I didn't get you anything.
Get the latest Samsung Galaxy smartphone now at your local EE shop or ee.co.uk. Offer available on purchases made by the 23rd of October 2019 and claimed online within 30 days. T&Cs apply.
You're 169 in the queue.
I proposed on the 169. She got off at the next stop.
You're my 169th greatest lover.
The number 169 never screamed going places until now. Get the Toyota Aygo X-Play for only £169 deposit, then £169 a month with 0% APR representative. Just go. Aygo.
0% APR representative on new sales of Aygo X-Play over 48 months. £169 per month. Customer deposit of £169 when proposed and approved via Access Toyota by 31st of October 2019. £3,487 and 50p optional final payment. Subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
Major League Baseball postseason is in full swing, and TuneIn Premium puts you at field level for every...
And it's a home run!
...single...
And gone!
...game.
And that gone, a home run!
With TuneIn Premium, catch every pitch of every inning of every Major League postseason game until the final out of the World Series.
0-2 pitch, little half swing, and it hit...
At home or on the road, Major League Baseball's postseason action is on TuneIn Premium.
And that ball is gone!
Upgrade today.
What if you could keep up with cable news even when you're on the go? With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to MSNBC live without any commercial interruptions. All of the news, none of the ads. Listen live on TuneIn Premium today.
Want to know what's happening in right now? The latest headlines are just a tap away with Fox News Talk on TuneIn. When news breaks, get up-to-the-minute coverage on developing stories from around the world. Plus, hear all the Fox shows you watch on your TV. Listen to Fox News Talk around the clock on TuneIn.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks lower, a little changed right now. Technology shares leading the way lower as investors mull earnings reports and the prospects of trade negotiations. Among those earnings reports out today, Bank of America shares advancing by 2% after the bell. We will be hearing from Netflix and IBM. The 10-year up 7/30 seconds at yield 1.74%. West Texas Intermediate crude pushing higher by 1.4%, 53.31 a barrel. And gold is up 0.5%, 14.88 the ounce. Again, recapping the Dow, the S&P and NASDAQ all lower. Little change, 6-point drop in the S&P now, down 0.2%. The Dow down 8. Also little change, NASDAQ lower by 11, a drop of just about 0.4%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Taylor Riggs here with Jason Kelly, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
Just like money in my pocket, baby love. Take that to the bank.
All right, take it to the bank. Bank of America reporting earnings. Our team all over it. We've got it two ways here. Jenny Serene, finance reporter for Bloomberg. She's in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio in New York City. And Arnold Kakuda, he is senior financials credit analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. Jenny, I want to start with you. So break it down. Investment bank sort of coming alive there, B of A.
It was definitely a surprise. I mean, much better performance than what analysts were anticipating. And when we heard from Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan today, he really pointed to the fact that they've been actually hiring hundreds of bankers and that those investments are starting to finally pay off. He said that one of the big things they've tried to do is actually give bankers less work. And so it's kind of a funny thing. They cover less companies. And so he says they're able to just, drive these deeper and deeper relationships. So that's really helped turn that business around.
Arnold, give me your take here. When we take a look at Bank of America, it is such a consumer-facing bank. And so that's a bank where when we look to them, we can get a really good gauge on the health of the consumer. Mortgages, credit cards, car loans, they seem to be crushing it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But, before that, I could say, in New York, we're about to get, crushed with rain right here. But, for the bank earnings, I just have to say it's been a perfect storm on the good side, right? So coming into the quarter, I think the expectations are really low. But then, we've had a surge in kind of risk on. We have yields higher, I think, and so, all these things are really positive for bank earnings. We had expectations cut back. And then so really, I think that's what we're seeing right now is, risk on movement. And then the banks are, meeting and, exceeding expectations. And, in terms of Bank of America, yes, very consumer oriented. They are asset quality in terms of, consumers paying their loans back on time. That's been really, really good, right? And so, a concern is, or good or bad, I guess you can look at kind of the loan growth, 6%, which seems nice, but, in a 2% growth environment, hey, we're kind of concerned that if that continues, is that being a little bit too aggressive? Although, the bank says that they are taking market share in this environment and the asset quality looks good. So, we are, it seems okay now.
We'll pick up on that, Jenny, because if they're taking market share, they're probably taking it from someone else. Like that's how this works. Synthesize this with what we've heard from the other banks so far, especially as it relates to the consumer business.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting. So Bank of America said today that they've opened a lot of branches over the last over the last year, really, renovated a lot more. They actually entered 3 new markets in the last year. And so I think, we've seen similar growth stories at the likes of JP Morgan. Wells Fargo is a little bit of a different beast. But I think in general, they're probably taking it from the smaller regional banks around the country where they really can't keep up on the tech spending. They really can't keep up, with these nice new fancy branches. And JP Morgan and Bank of America are looking at that and I guess seeing dollar signs. They really like the idea of that growth.
Tech. Taylor, they're speaking your language.
I know. Well, and I'm going to go right there with Arnold because we on San Francisco are all focused on fintech. We've talked a lot about the rise of Zelle, peer-to-peer payments, the investments in technology, hiring coders, for example. Arnold, from your position, is Bank of America poised to be one of the leaders as they've made some heavy investments in their digital banking, online banking, accepting mortgage applications that were initiated from an online customer. I mean, where do they stand in the technological revolution?
Oh, absolutely. I think they stand shoulder to shoulder with, their peers, and they have to, right? Like you said, the pressures from fintech, and it's just, you have to do this in order to be relevant. And, it's also like, I think Goldman's a good example of, before they used to talk about, we're managing our expenses. It's really the comp expenses as a percentage of revenue. But now they're saying, hey, wait a second, we're trying to invest more in technology. So you have to look at comp and non-comp. And within that non-comp, it's this investment in technology, right, where everybody's doing that. And so they're saying, hey, comp expenses are coming down, but, because of this is more of an infrastructure platform, you have to look at, expenses overall as a percentage of revenue, not just comp.
All right, so Jenny, I want to ask you about Brian Moynihan, because I feel like he's been out and about a little bit more lately. He was on Peer-to-Peer with Dave Rubenstein. He did a panel with Carol Masser and myself over at the Global Business Forum. Feels like, and I trust your instincts on this, he's got a little more swagger these days. He's feeling a little more confident about Bank of America's place in the market. Am I misreading that?
No, I don't think you are. I think you're right. I think he still does go back to that mantra that they always love, responsible growth. So I don't think he maybe has the swagger of a Jamie Dimon, who's a little bit...
Who does?
Yeah, exactly. But I think you're right. And I think it's very interesting. You see some of the marketing materials that these banks put out, which, you can put stock in whatever you want to. But Bank of America's is actually really, it features Brian Moynihan, and it kind of shows him going to work, and he's just your average banker, and he's really the CEO. So I think you're right. They're giving him more play. They're giving him more face time. And it definitely seems like it's a signal that, Bank of America is starting to hit its stride.
Well, and as you say, a very strong contrast with Wells Fargo, which is still sort of trying to pull it all together. They've got a new CEO coming in, so we'll see what happens there. Thank you so much, Jenny Serrain, finance reporter for Bloomberg, Arnold Kakuta, senior financials credit analyst with BI, both here with me in New York City. Taylor Riggs out in San Francisco. Coming up, we're going to talk a little ESG, and then we're going to talk to Chuck Schwab. I'm excited.
He's, I think, born from Sacramento, used to live in Sausalito, so I'm a little upset that he's not here joining me in San Francisco. But, Jason, on a very serious note, when Charles Schwab came out a few weeks ago and cut fees, you had all of the competitors drop 10%. I mean, this is a company that when they move, the whole market moves, the whole industry moves. So really excited to get his thoughts on if cutting fees was a good decision. Why did they do it? Why now?
That's coming up in just a few minutes. And also, he's got a new book out, put some historical context around this market that he really helped pioneer back in the 1970s. You're looking and listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly, Taylor Riggs, right here on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks are modestly lower this hour. The Dow Jones Industrials are down 21 points, nearly 0.1% to 27,002. The Nasdaq is down 36 points. The S&P 500 is down 8. There is word of a tentative contract agreement between General Motors and the United Auto Workers Union. Observers thought a breakthrough was near when GM CEO Mary Barra made an appearance at the bargaining table yesterday. If approved, the agreement will end a month-long strike at GM. Shares of Bank of America are up 1 3/4%. B of A's quarterly profit declined, but topped forecasts. American consumers may not be as upbeat as economists thought. A 6-month-long run of improving retail sales ended in September. The Commerce Department says sales declined 0.3% last month. And the International Energy Agency says OPEC may face a serious challenge trying to defend oil prices next year. Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg Radio.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. History.
London. Switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and V Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Welcome aboard Europe's 169th safest airline.
You were like my 169th biggest crush in school.
Your total body age is 169.
The number 169 never screamed glamour until now. Get the Toyota Igo X-Play for only £169 deposit, then £169 a month with 0% APR representative. Just go. Igo.
0% APR representative on new sales of Igo X-Play over 48 months. £169 per month. Customer deposit of £169 when proposed and approved via Access Toyota by 31st of October 2019. £3,487.50p optional final payment. Subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
Hey, you. Yes, you. We didn't make Nature Valley nut butter biscuits so you could just sit and munch them on the train. Not when there's a whole forest out here to explore. Isn't that right? Go get it!
Delicious whole grain biscuits with a real nut butter filling. Nature Valley Nut Butter Biscuits. Get out more.
No one wants to get caught in the cold in London. We're with you. So our boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit to avoid a big chill to your wallet. You'll get a 5-year British Gas warranty. And now we can even quote by video call after work or weekends at a time that suits you. Get a quote by the 30th of November and get £150 off a new boiler or £450 off for existing home care customers. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
Hey, it's me again, the TV. Since my family gave me Now TV, there's